Welcome to Benno and Hamflett in Your House, a podcast reviewing WWE's iconic New Generation B shows in order from the bust back to the room. I'm Benno.
And I'm Hamflett. And Benno, it's a new year in the new generation, but it's the same us. Are you ready, finally, now that we have left a difficult and a challenging 1995 behind? Are you ready to sort of enter this brave new world of 1996, where all of the sort of the fun and games of the early days of the new generation have been replaced by spite and shots fired across television channels and, well, the evil of guaranteed contracts daring to sort of try and put the mom and pop shop that is the worldwide leader of sports entertainment out of business?
That damn Eric Bischoff and that evil billionaire Ted, taking what were they doing? Taking less money for ad spots. They were, basically signing all the wrestlers, spending more money than poor little WWE was willing to do. They were basically doing Vince McMahon in the 1980s, pretty much is what they were doing at this point. Oh yeah, the war is definitely on in '96.
You've misunderstood, you see, Benno. No, you see, what Vince McMahon did was give wrestlers opportunities. Eric Bischoff is just giving people cash. You have to understand why those two things are very different,
They're coming for our jobs, isn't that what was it, Gerald Briscoe, wasn't it? He was literally the South Park. They took our jobs, on every documentary.
Would just they'd lock him in a studio, they'd just get him to record 7 different versions of "They hated our families, they hated our families." It was the original. Gerald Briscoe was the first wrestler in recorded history to complain about food being taken off his plate.
He was the original. That's who I should have gone for him instead of Ben Carson and the other stuff that's got me in trouble on Twitter over the years, honestly. And where is he now? Did they even pay him? He's in his garage, isn't he? Flogging New Generation wears, flogging Diesel's gloves, isn't he? Flogging they're all a bit tatty, unfortunately. It's like tatty ring posts and a little bits of ring curtain and things like that he's got going. He needs to give that garage a bit of a clean. That Briscoe body shop could do with hiring a cleaner or two.
If this is the thing, right? In his shed, there might be new generation T-shirts and rare videos from old tours and things like that. But you know what? There isn't dinners. It's because WCW took them all. That's the problem.
Oh, he'll be with the Hebner brothers soon. He'll be flogging it all on eBay. He'll end up getting in trouble for it. That's where they're
getting bothered again.
Get your pension, Jerry. Come on. Doing the good stuff.
Did you see, by the way, that they one of the many shed treasures, #shed treasures, we'll give them a little bit of a plug because it's awesome stuff to see. And have you noticed as well, loads of overlaps with this podcast and the stuff we cover as well. He dug out a WrestleMania 12 poster, and it ends up mirroring something we see a glimpse of on the next In Your House. We're going to cover Rage in the Cage on the next episode, because it's the WrestleMania poster set out like the cinematic style, where you see the cast list and you see the names like Kerwin Silfies and Kevin Dunn.
Oh, I did see that, yeah.
There's Brett, there's Shawn, there's Undertaker, there's Diesel, and there's Goldust, and there's Razor Ramon. And that was on all the original printouts. It had all those people. And then obviously, as we'll get to as we go through these sort of reviews, WrestleMania would look so good for the bad guy, would it?
He's the original Jericho, and all the WrestleMania 2000 stuff that comes out where we were all questioning, going, why was Big Show in that match? Why is it Big Show? And then you see, it is Jericho's literally on all of the advertising material. Just Vince woke up one day and was like, nah, not you, mate. You're too short. Those lifts in your boots, they're not doing a good enough job.
They're not fooling me. You're slipping off half of them when you're fighting Kane over cups of coffee. It's funny, actually, Benno, you mentioned WrestleMania 16 in particular. We've realised, this will drop. The dates slightly, but it's going to drop around WrestleMania season for a lot of the listeners that are listening as these episodes come out, and we're very grateful for those listeners that do. And WrestleMania 16 has kind of been in the conversation in the build-up to WrestleMania 41 as we find ourselves in 2025, mainly because...
Fucking hell, world.
Oh, aye. So much of it, yeah. So, I mean, we're all in our 30s, but I can't even say that on this podcast for much longer. The idea that, WrestleMania being this grandest stage and all of the WWE hyperbole, and the idea that you've got to get as many people, if they're big stars, on the roster, has led us back to that boom of 2000 all over again in 2025, when increasingly it feels like we're staring down the barrel of multi-mans and compromises and, sort of triple threats and four ways and tags just for the sake of it. Do you remember at the time WrestleMania 16 in particular feeling as disappointing as that card still looks, because I couldn't work out then why I was having such a sad time watching that event.
Yeah, considering it was like a peak year, because this is the thing with me, like there's genuinely been, you'll be proud of this, there's genuinely been times in my life where I've thought to myself, how old am I again? And then I've gone, what WrestleMania was it this year? Because I'm always the same age as WrestleMania. I was 16 that year, and I'll be 41 after this year's WrestleMania, which is, God, saying that out loud, that hurts. So I remember I was 16, I was in my pomp going into sixth form as a big wrestling fan, and yeah, it was weird because obviously WCW's in the shitter at that point as well, and obviously the year 2000 is probably outside the 1997 for me, probably the best WWF year, obviously outside of 1995 and 1996, of course, to keep kayfabe. But but you don't know that at that point in the year, do you? And it did feel like a weird time. 1999 is definitely not one of my favorite WWF years, and it kind of felt like more of the same. But it did feel like, this is supposed to be a big one. Not only are they not calling it like properly WrestleMania 16 and going with WrestleMania 2000, like that felt wrong. That felt wrong. And then doing the 4-way instead of doing Rock and Triple H, that felt wrong. Like everything about it just didn't feel right.
No, I even to the point where when you watch it back now, and obviously WrestleMania 17 would correct this because it was the first one back in a stadium in a long time. But remember how like stunning the WrestleMania 15 set was for something that was quite minimalist. Like it had the big X and V just in the big sort of silver lettering. The WrestleMania 2000, the WrestleMania 16 set is grim. It's like two long, thin Titantrons. Like they're really narrow. They're only about the width of the WrestleMania logo.
That's right.
And it's just so unremarkable. And I think for a time when WWE had never felt bigger and hotter, and the fact it was back in Anaheim, which to me felt like it got one every 5 minutes because it had only had WrestleMania 12 a few years earlier. But nothing about it was as big as the Fed itself was. And it's kind of made me understand why the philosophy did go to stadium exclusives. I got it. I remember like the traditionalist in me and the wrestling OCD desperately wanted WrestleMania 30 to be back at Madison Square Garden, but having to accept that those days were gone because the part of the WrestleMania now is the size and the scale. And I think like I'm a shameless sucker for how big WWE can make itself look. I posted on X a little while ago that image from WrestleMania 6, from the very, very, very back row, taken through a lens that seems to zoom out even further, so the ring is barely something you can see. I like WWF when it just presents almost as obnoxiously bigger than everything else.
That's the way it should be, though, isn't it? Because like I always feel like it's like when we talk about like the 80s shows and it'd be frustrating watching like this great WWF tape that you got like a SummerSlam 88 or even bigger, even WrestleManias like early on, and like the finish would be a DQ, or have you ever tried to like, maybe that's a project for us in future, just watch them all in order and feuds disappear and wrestlers disappear because actually these shows that in our life as kids were the most important thing in the world, to the wrestlers were just another booking, and to the company it was like, but we can flog that on the house shows, you know what I mean, we can get another 6 weeks out of this if we do a DQ finish on pay-per-view and go forward. And I feel like that attitude was prevalent even as much as they put behind WrestleMania and wanted it to be their Super Bowl and stuff. They talk the talk, but they never really walk the walk until they make that switch, until it becomes bigger than anything because it's stadium sized and it's befitting of what it's supposed to be for a WrestleMania. It almost felt like WrestleMania being as important as it is now was like headcanon for the fans more than it was the wrestlers and the company itself until kind of that certain point in history.
They were quite good, weren't they? I think at the time when WWE finally became comfortable with its own history, which was basically when they put WCW out of business and they could start using the footage of the old wrestlers again.
Oh yeah, Hulk Hogan did work here in the 80s, we'll admit that.
Yeah, that's it. Like
stuff like that.
Hogan, and like just no longer being like spiteful towards someone like Bret Hart or whatever. And you can picture the image of him holding the belt up at WrestleMania 10, for example. They were very good at like isolating specific WrestleMania moments, capital W, capital M, without ever necessarily asking the audience to go and watch every minute of every show. Like we joked when the Netflix launch happened that somebody was going to pick WrestleMania 1 as a starting point and not realize how a lot of it is quite drab. WrestleMania 2 is actively a bad show, I think the standout moments, one of the reasons they stand out is because they wanted people to think WrestleMania was just that And as you say, only in the later years did they try and put that across the entire 3 hours, or now the entire 2 nights.
Totally. We made the joke, haven't we, before, that like I've been a couple of months ago. I was in a club in Liverpool, the Crazy House. A lot of people will know it, and I'm sure it's a place for that's been a pilgrimage for you. We were in there, and obviously Netflix they were showing WrestleMania 2 on the screens while they were playing all kinds of emo rock and stuff like that. Not quite. Unfortunately, we're so old now that the retro metal and stuff like that, it's not hitting the right audience now. All the 30-year-olds want emo stuff from the 2010s. Even rock clubs are going down the tubes at this point. But the fact that they had WrestleMania 2 on just said to me they'd open Netflix, found the WrestleMania page, and just click play on season 1 of WrestleMania, and it's like it doesn't quite get good for a little while, lads. And over there's WrestleMania 3, and then obviously we all love the whole Savage and Hogan story into 5, and 6 is Hogan Warrior. But they're very much kind of one match cards until, like you say, 17 becomes the mold for what WrestleMania is. It's every match is like the big match. Every match is important, and sometimes that eats itself, doesn't it? There's a couple of years after 17 and on actually that great. Even if on paper they sounded great because they were piling everything in, but that attitude, it doesn't actually hit until those later years. Until you pretty much nailed it there. Until it becomes more of a stadium thing.
And they definitely knackered it as well, because I remember how amazing, and how amazingly received WrestleMania 17 was. And we've discussed on other podcasts on your shows on the GRAPPL Network when we were reviewing 2001, how so many people felt like WrestleMania 17 was the end of wrestling for them. Steve Austin selling out to Vince McMahon, to them, was their season finale. It was only us that knew that you were supposed to stick around afterwards. And the numbers bear it out as well. It's not just in your social circles. You could see it happening, obviously on screen. But I remember, other than The Rock and Hulk Hogan in all of its magnificence, I remember the build-up and execution of WrestleMania 18 being the moment when I realized, oh, this has all gone to shit. This is fundamentally, in terms of build, in terms of the usage of the stars, and even how ugly that mess of scaffold they called a set in the Sky Dome was that I'm not getting WrestleMania 17 back until this product gets at least halfway decent again. And obviously it wouldn't for a while. That leads me to ask you, I'm going to ban WrestleMania 17 from the conversation.
Oh, shit.
Where would you list your favorites? Where do you land on some of the non-WrestleMania 17 greats? Or I don't know, I would say 5-1, but I wouldn't want to get a copyright claim from the GRAPPL YouTube channel. But where would some of your top manias sit, outside of WrestleMania 17?
Yeah, they're all kind of a time, because they're all, despite everything I just said, they're all the fond memories of, maybe it's just your age at the time and it's going through it, despite the weakness of some of the undercards. It's probably ones from around the era we're talking about. It's probably even despite the main event, WrestleMania 12, that obviously we're going to be getting into the build to today, just because I remember being so excited to get up and watch it. I've told the story on GRAPPL a few times, but that was one our dad was supposed to tape it the night before and he forgot. He forgot to hit tape, because back in the day, kids, you had to hit tape record on an actual video player or set the timer for it. That was Dad's job that night, and he just completely forgot about it. Got up in the morning, felt really guilty, and we woke up, got up, and there was a little magazine, TV guide. It had circled on it the WrestleMania replay that was on at 3 p.m. on Sky Sports that day, just to tell us. And we were like, okay, that's fine. We'll just have to kill a few hours. When it's like waiting for Christmas, we were going crazy all day waiting for it. And then we finally got it at 3 p.m. and it was just joyous and it was brilliant until that main event hit. And then we realized, because we were watching the 3 p.m. replay, there were adverts in the 60-minute Iron Man match plus overtime. So anyone who remembers watching that, I think it took about 2 hours to get through the entire thing. But up until that point, it felt like Christmas Day, and despite my dad's fuck up, we had a brilliant day watching it, and it felt like almost the peak of my fandom as a kid, very much so. That's got to be up there. And then going back, it is probably more the 80s ones. It's obviously WrestleMania 5, Hogan and Savage, Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania 6, which I'll always stand by, one of the great matches in WWE history. WrestleMania 7 too, speaking of the same character, some of the bad characters, but a lot of fun with Savage and Warrior in there as well. That's probably the sweet spot for me. And then into this period in 96, WrestleMania 12. And being honest, post 20, this might be sacrilege to you, they do blend together a little bit to me. So yeah, that's where most of my favorites come from.
There's a sort of a Dr. Fed thing buzzing in the back of my head where I know the ones that you're on about blending together, and then I feel the need to like sort of defend certain other ones because there was definitely
understandable, yeah,
like
yeah.
the Rock Cena years, the 27, 28, 29 WrestleManias, where obviously they kind of had this 3-year
That
program.
got me back in.
But also,
yeah,
like the undercards of them, some of them are just wastes of time, just really, really like pointless filler matches that don't stand up outside of the time they existed in, and some of them weren't even good then. I've got like, this may seem counter to what we normally talk about on these podcasts, and one of them is because I was there, and I think you can't get away from live bias.
Of course.
But I think WrestleMania 38 night 1, like especially as the years go by, considering that it was the last one of the prior era, obviously because by WrestleMania 39 Triple H was very much in charge of creative, but 38 night 1 ended with Steve Austin's return match against Kevin Owens. It also featured Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair in like something of a modern WrestleMania classic, and it was the return of Cody Rhodes against Seth Rollins. And I mean, to have 3 matches that of that high quality and that big, you know, Cody's return happening on the same night as Steve Austin's return, and like Cody's like seeing Austin wrestle and take that suplex on the floor was amazing, but Cody stole the night, you know, Cody stole the weekend. He was the talking point, the guy. But I'm a 39 guy now that Cody finished the story at 40. I spent a year agreeing with you in your civil war with Matty. I spent a year nervously fuming that WWE had bottled it at the wrong time, but because they paid it off at 40, it kind of makes 39 perfect.
It's a bit of a retconning, but yeah, I've got to kind of concede that. But like, you know, it worked out in the end, despite Dwayne's best efforts. Kind of similar to this year, actually. But I would agree, and I can see that as like a, you know, the peak of everything they were, you know, attempting to build, and then obviously the follow up there as well. When you were saying 39, I was thinking, is that the Sami Zayn Knoxville one? That's 38, isn't it? That's the year before.
That's the only good bit on 38 night too, because it's got that Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns stinker. Like, the third of their stinkers in their WrestleMania legacy. Like, it's, but yeah, Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville at 38 is good. I'm a bit of a, like, because I'm still ultimately, you know, like almost like proudly fed-pilled and just like the grand productions as well. I think they get most of 30 right in New Orleans. Like, Bryan against Triple H, Bryan winning at the end, the streak ending, the set is gorgeous, the big purple, like, logo on the stage, and that the Superdome in New Orleans, certainly a place I'd love to visit for next year's WrestleMania. I still sort of see that as a template for what makes like a good big, like again, obnoxiously big WWE show. Definitely,
and that's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of like I mean, mostly it happens, doesn't it? The big babyface gets the big win at WrestleMania. Speaking of WrestleMania 2000, doesn't always happen, especially when Paul is involved. But mostly it happens, but not always to that degree. And that's one of, again, it's similar story, isn't it? Similar to Roman and Cody, and you know them getting that wrong, but getting it right in the end. You know, it's so right at the end because it was so wrong going on, as we were talking about a couple of housekeepings ago. You don't get happier endings than that, really, do you? In wrestling, like that's one I would have killed. How many manias you've been to? Is it just? It can't be just the one. I'm sure it's a few.
I've been very lucky with the big stuff. So I went to 35 as well, which was Becky Lynch main eventing and Kofi Mania. So like I had that, I had Austin at 38, and then I had Cody Rhodes finishing the story at 40. So I've been pretty lucky for like the sort of the significant sort of chapter points of the era, at least. I've been pretty fortunate in that regard.
See, mine,
some of the lads went to 39, and they like said when Cody lost, they were like filming their stuff outside the venue, and it was getting pretty tense because a lot of people had left so angry that even hearing that Roman beats Cody and just having to listen to a review of it again was getting a little bit angsty with that many people around that were that fuming that they'd actually gone through with beating Cody Rhodes.
See, my problem is I've only ever been to one Mania. I went to Mania 22, which again show my age here, obviously all the way back.
All State Arena Mania though, Benno. That's thoroughbred punk fandom that is going to see him on his gangster car at the All State Arena.
That, though, I was gonna say I was the spoiled like ROH fan back then, so I was obviously, I wasn't going for WrestleMania, mate. I was going for the ROH WrestleMania weekend. They had Lance Storm versus Bryan Danielson on. That's why I was there. They had Homicide versus Colt Cabana. That's why I was in town. I was there to see the real stars of the weekends. But yeah, I was there with a load of ROH fans, and we were, to be honest, like kind of tutting and going, this isn't as good as yesterday. This was very early. Those WrestleMania weekends weren't really a thing. That was probably the first proper one. It had the big, I'm sure you've heard of it, like the Dragon Gate 6-span of ROH Law was on that weekend, and that kind of started a bit of a tradition of the Super Indies. Yeah, I was at that one too. I've been at a few.
That was the...
You've been at a few Manias and a few WWE chapter points. I've been, I think, about 5 of Dave Meltzer's 5-star matches all time somehow. That's one of them. That's in there. Yeah. I don't mention it as much as I do Joe Kobashi.
6-man, is it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
do fix their blood generation.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, it's unbelievable, and it's like something we'd never seen before. So we're spoiled for that. And like I say, I should mention it as much as I do Joe Kobashi and the other ones, Nigel and Brian is another 5-star match I was at as well. But like, because we were so spoiled, we were at WrestleMania going, impress us then. We've seen the best wrestler in the world this weekend. And then WWE trotting out Big Show and Kane, who at WrestleMania 22 might as well have been 55 years old, never mind sticking around like the bad smells they are for another 2 decades that they did. So I don't think I really appreciated it for what it was, and I wasn't necessarily one of those anti-Cena, WWE fans, but like it wasn't really my WWE, and it wasn't really what I wanted to see. But to your point, the payoff was all worth it, because at the end of the night we did get a bit of IWW, because I was one of the few managed to spot among the gangsters who came out with John Cena, a tattooed looking gangster with a funny old beard, which was CM Punk. He wasn't very incognito. He waved to a couple of people I was with, because he was just he was made up that the ROH fans at the front few rows recognised them. But yeah, I got that. That was my WrestleMania moment, mate. Seeing the Punkers true WWE at least WrestleMania debut.
I'm surprised that you haven't been more into Cope versus Mox, considering you saw the birth of his hardcore legacy when he speared Mankind through the table. He's been calling himself a Nita ever since, hasn't he? For that one match.
I mean, it was cool and the flames were hot, but it didn't. I even saw Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon have a ladder match. Like, I saw Shawn Michaels at a WrestleMania. Like, to think about that is crazy. Got Mickey James.
He had some stinking grey and red baggy pants for that Mania as well. His gear for that Mania was rotten. Awful. I don't know what he was thinking with that.
He had some bad gear during that period. So, yeah, it's one more like if I retcon it and look at it with hindsight. I saw some really great stuff, but I probably didn't appreciate it the way I should have in the moment. But it's still, it was Chicago. I was there for a WrestleMania weekend. The overall weekend is a favourite for me, even if it's not necessarily the experience of being there live myself. I'll get to another one day, though, promise.
I'll take us a little bit back to the timeline with a WrestleMania 12 heartbreak story of my own. We didn't have Sky at the time, so I was looking forward to getting the tape as usual from my dad pestering one of his work colleagues, and the tape arrived probably a few days after, like the Wednesday, Thursday, something like that. And I put it in, all excited, and we didn't have a long play video at the time, and the guy had taped it on long play, so everything was like. So I watched that entire show, and it was like, because it was going so fast, the color just became black and white. So my first ever viewing of WrestleMania 12 was watched on double speed in black and white. Now, it made the Iron Man match better, but I wasn't getting much out of Steve Austin versus Savio Vega when it was
my God.
But I watched it. You know how, like, did you ever have the time where, like, you listened to any of the Sky box office pay-per-views with the...
Always, yeah.
Like, and you swore that you could make out the wrestlers through the snow or the interference or whatever. That was my first viewing of WrestleMania 12, and I had to wait for. I don't even think I would have known in time for the replay. So I reckon it was when one of my mates got the Coliseum tape when that came out, and it was like straight round to his, or I was borrowing it straight away to watch it.
These kids don't know the bone. We do that every summer, like the period obviously we cover here on Benno and Hamflett. Like my dad, obviously, big Everton supporter, we'd have Sky, and then the summer would come and the footies, and we're like, well, that's it, son, we're cancelling Sky for 3 months, and it'd be the worst 3 months of the year for us. But you bet we on analog Sky, we'd still be getting Sky Sports up on a Friday and trying to listen to Raw. We just listened to the commentary. It was like listening to it on the wireless in the hope that maybe we'd see something through the gaps, or like maybe they'd forget to pixelate it one day. Like that was the original. Like, yeah, keeping up to it via pure sounds. Like I had loads of copies like that, like the old pirate videos that used to get passed around. The version of, you'd make do as a kid, wouldn't you? Like a Home Alone 2. I'm pretty sure the first copy I had of that was a terrible pirated copy from the cinema. I think the statutes of limitations are gone now. It had like a red hue on it. We'd still watch it 50 times. So I was probably the same as you were there with that WrestleMania 12 tape. You just you made do, mate, in slim times.
It was getting stuff from tape traders, wasn't it? Where you could tell certain tapes were like, an example I can think of, like the 7th generation version of Uncensored 96, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage versus 20 guys, triple cage match. It had a certain different color. And whenever you would see the images on the internet, on primitive Google image, they'd all have that same color hue because we'd all watch the same copy of a copy tape version of it.
That's it. We all live the same life, I reckon, just in different parts of the country.
But yeah, I mean, well, obviously this is very much our sort of UK experience of this, but we do need to say, going back to 1996, and I guess the period we're about to go headfirst into with this first In Your House of 1996, like the Fed's off to a little bit of a flyer for a change. They're drawing again. The ratings battle is a battle. It's the trading. Nitro gets a big win in January, but then I think it's the Torch at the time is willing to call it a fluke because then it goes back to very much like nip and tuck as the weeks go on. Shawn Michaels, the alleged non-draw, according to some Brett favoring podcasts, is doing great guns at the box office and justifying everything that we saw in the heartbreaking post-Survivor Series Raw. Like now that he's back making the odd town or two, the Royal Rumble is a surprise hit on pay-per-view. Where Shawn, of course, wins the second Rumble, where Goldust, who we first saw having a bit of a nightmare, to be fair, In Your House 4 Great White North, wins the Intercontinental title, so they're going with him all the way. Vader comes in like a lion at the Rumble itself, but is working with a shoulder injury, so they find a kind of ingenious way to write him out when he batters Gorilla Monsoon. And because Gorilla Monsoon's been battered, a guy that I don't think either of us actually like, and we'll get on to more of him in our next month's review. Roddy Piper returns as an interim president, which sort of shocks the world a little bit because the first speculation was kicking around that he was going to be WCW bound, but it feels like Vince McMahon has had a little bit of a win, I guess, getting one of his old favorites back into the fold, because at least he's finally got like an 80s guy he can talk about because everyone else is over there. It's I don't know. It's feeling like there's a little bit of buzz about the place. And it's become, I don't know if you found this, it's become 1996, like on January 1st, doesn't it? They are wanting 1995 to be gone straight away.
Yeah, it's become the Shawn year, isn't it? Which is what 1996 is. It's the year of Shawn. Probably again why I'm so fond of this period we're about to get into. It's off to a flyer, to borrow your phrase there. It is very, and yeah, Shawn does deserve the credit because Rumble does better, Mania does better. You can share that credit with Brett. The next In Your House we're about to talk about does a lot better than the last couple of In Your Houses before it as well, which is an undertalk thing that's been lost to history a little bit. It does feel like they're doing some things right, and we're moving into a different era. Basically, they're making it more adult. How do they do that? Basically, Sonny's all over everything as well. That's how you also know it's 1996. We're pre-Attitude Era, but it's getting a little bit in that direction. It does. It feels like new generations, a new top babyface, new baddies, as you mentioned there with Vader, who's a gigantic ingredient here. Maybe it doesn't end the way we would necessarily want it to as well. But yeah, it does feel like there's a few little mini wins for the WWF side in this period.
What was this is like where we can cover some of this, I guess. Obviously, some of it factors into the build in Rage in the Cage. What were your memories of the Royal Rumble 1996 and Shawn's big comeback and some of the, like, because I remember, again, like not being able to watch the television every week. I was once again struck by how just new and fresh the roster felt. And because I was such a sucker for all of the WWE, any new character was exciting to me. So getting my first look at the ringmaster, like I hadn't seen him putting his hand to the camera with his taped fingers and saying, "Put your hand on my hand." I just saw him lurch out at the Royal Rumble as this guy that looked dangerous. For example, it was like all of these Rumbles over these new generation years. It was just a total house cleaning and mind a housekeeping, wasn't it? It was like 20 new guys and a few you remember.
That's it for me. It's like, obviously, if I can never pinpoint when we first started watching wrestling, but it's like 89 or 90, I think, when we started getting the tapes off my cousin John, and he'd pass them over, and that kind of was how we watched wrestling. And then it was, borrowing from mates, and it was going around to people's houses and things like that. 96, as I've said a few times, is the year we properly, or 95 was probably the year we got Sky. 96 was where it was like we had the right package, or it fit in with the football season enough that my dad had pay the extra for Sky Sports, that I was able to watch everything. And like I just think now that we're into this year, this is the year where I distinctly remember every show and where I was for every show, and whose house I was around the odd time I was, and what we were doing. I can even remember when we get to a match a little bit later, I can remember what we had for dinner that day. That's how my memory is going. And it's better than a match we're going to talk about, and that's a little bit earlier than this, but that's the kind of memories I've got. And yeah, Rumble 96, it was the first Rumble and the first time, because I was watching so much in the early 90s through tapes and at mates' houses and not necessarily seeing it in chronological order, it was the first time I was fully invested, fully on that road to Rumble 1996, and it not just being a Royal Rumble that we got to enjoy watching on tape and got to cheer for our favourite wrestlers and not really know the context. It was a Royal Rumble that we lived and breathed the moment from, obviously the Shawn concussion, post-concussion syndrome, into, tell me a lie, into the most depressed man on earth at that press conference announcing that he's going to come back and be in Rumble 96. It was just hook it to our veins. Me and our Peter were watching it every single week, desperate for this Rumble 96 to come. And I was watching it like it was a sport. I was watching it like I don't really care about being entertained here. Shawn just has to win. Like they'd sold me hook, line, and sinker for it. So I've got so many fond memories of like watching this Rumble 96 and just being honestly probably the most invested I've ever been in my life in WWE WWF stories, apart from when they get things wrong in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I know that feeling. I call it 2022 to present day, but it's
and not the 20 years before, obviously.
Indeed. Oh God, no. No, I sort of distinctly remember. I've told stories before about how, and we're going to get to this much further down the line, about how I almost felt a bit guilty when Stone Cold Steve Austin was kind of catching my eye, and I was basically being worked by some brilliant storytelling and kind of falling in love with Steve Austin and ready to abandon Bret Hart, which obviously was, again, by design. I was perfect fodder for that character. But I remember Shawn Michaels, specifically his return from the Rumble, and I can remember his entrance even, they did the side-by-side screen, much like we are now with a split screen. And it looked like he was floating to the ring. He was invincible in that match. Nothing, like they really did a very effective job. You say about it feeling like a real sport. They did such an effective job of the idea that nothing could stop him from like achieving this dream. And like that was winning the league, wasn't it? That's like a team that will go on like an unbeaten run or something like that. Shawn Michaels, whether it was by accident or design or just because he'd made himself so undeniable as the company's next top guy, they did present him as this sporting dynasty in the making that you had to follow right through to WrestleMania.
And if you were a bit older, it was probably boring. You were probably going, well, Shawn Michaels will win the Rumble. Like, obviously, they've literally built nobody else up. Like, if you're watching it with today's eyes, it'd be a bit boring, wouldn't it? Well, Shawn's winning. There's literally no surprise they could have done. But you're right, being young enough to be invested in it. I remember, like, my heart being in my mouth. The moment in the Rumble when Vader comes back in the ring and throws Shawn over the top. It was like, what do they do now? What are they going to do? How are they going to get out of this? Shawn's lost. Like, I was literally being completely devastated and then being elated that he was back in the match. It was real to me, damn it, in this Rumble. And I was so along for that ride.
It's brilliant, man. Well, look, we're going to have to park our Shawn enthusiasm and instead share something I was enthusiastic for. Because there is a 5-star match review, Benno, that I've been putting off while we talk about 1996. But nonetheless, I do want to thank D_S_R1 for submitting this all the same. For those that are listening to this podcast for the very first time, the 5-star match review is something that me and Benno like to do, ultimately to fool the algorithm into getting us up the podcast charts and getting more people to listen to this podcast, as well as indulging in a bit of old fed or indeed anything you request, and this week is absolutely proof of that. Anything that you request, if you leave us a 5-star review, put something in the comment below. You can say something nice, you can say something nasty, but if you leave us a match that you might like us to talk about as sort of a little bit of an additional ancillary content to our regular in your house reviews, you can do so under that 5-star review. And that's what we've had from DS_R1, who was put in the comment, really looking forward to the pod. Can you review The Undertaker versus The Undertaker from SummerSlam 1994. Please make sure in your review of this that you respect the damn business. If you don't, I will get Bradshaw to fetch my gavel. I want to say thank you for that, but then we're about to talk about the match and you'll realize that I'm being insincere in that thank you. Benno, let's talk about the build to this as much as the match, because there's almost now to talk about in the match, and we don't want to say things about the Undertaker's relationship with Brian Lee that may get us in legal hot water. But Undertaker in 1994 gets beaten by Yokozuna and the rest of the heel roster, basically, and put in the casket at the Royal Rumble 1994. He says that people will soon witness his rebirth, and then it may or may not have been Marty Jannetty floating off into the ceiling. Undertaker appears to be, I don't know, consumed by an electricity of some kind that basically turns his silhouette white and convinced me to Tipex my Undertaker Hasbro white, so that I had to ask for a new one when he came back in the summer. And then he's gone. He's gone and nothing happens until over the summer, WWE plays a series of vignettes where a guy at a deli, some kids at a nursery, some firefighters, some people in a jewelry shop, and even the $1 Million Man wearing a tracksuit version of his old suit, Ted DiBiase, is in a graveyard saying that he too has seen The Undertaker. And in fact, he's found him. He's going to bring him back. The Undertaker appears back on Superstars through the wonderful aesthetic of the Heartbreak Hotel, Shawn Michaels and Diesel's interview segment that summer, because yet again, Shawn was getting out of actually wrestling for a living at the time. He's the smartest guy in the business. So Undertaker returns with DiBiase, looks like The Undertaker, wrestles mostly like The Undertaker, but Paul Bearer says that's not the real Undertaker. He goes off to the graveyard to find the real one, and then if there was any doubt left in anybody's mind, if this Undertaker that Ted DiBiase had unearthed wasn't legit, when it appears as if Undertaker's going to go back to Paul Bearer, Ted DiBiase flashes awards of hundreds in his face, and the Undertaker's neck snaps to the cash. He's not interested in Paul Bearer. He's interested in the money. This guy's not the real one. On the go-home edition of WWF Superstars before SummerSlam, as Ted DiBiase's Undertaker is zipping somebody else into the body bag, Paul Bearer appears and says, "I'll see you at SummerSlam, mate," and you hear the legit business respecter himself. The dead man's voice echoes throughout the building to say that he's going to teach the fake Undertaker a lesson at SummerSlam, and the match is set. Undertaker versus Undertaker. Were you in? Were you out? Were you telling your mates about this one? Where on earth did you sit with any of this?
Bemused is the answer, because this does come in the period where, like I say, I'm watching it, mates, and it's the one mate who's still watching it. Who am I? I just think the thing I remember of this match, Michael, I don't remember the match. I remember being at my mate Barry Grundy's and his mum bringing us out a plate of sausage rolls, and she said it so slowly and so specifically that I just thought they were this weird, because they were chopped up into little pieces. And at that point in my young life, I'd only had full size, a full size Greg's sausage roll. Yeah. And in a Scouse accent, that just sounds as one word. I think at 9 years old, I think it was literally spelled sausage roll with a D in it. So when she brought out these fancy sausage rolls, because she was a little bit posher, and served them to us, I thought I was in gourmet heaven, mate. And it might have shaped the entire rest of my culinary life, that I was eating these wonderful sausage rolls. Yeah, that's what I thought. This must be what posh people eat. So I'm sat there watching Undertaker versus Undertaker. I don't care about this Leslie Nielsen. I don't care about this match. Where can we get more of this? And I remember running home, going to my mum, can we get some sausage rolls in? And she's like, we've got some in the fridge. What are you on about? I was like, no, the smaller. And I was like, yeah, they're chopped up. Oh, right, okay. I'm just an idiot 9-year-old. I get it. But then I was in heaven. Then mate, chopped them up. You turn one sausage roll into 3 pieces. It was a wonderful time, which is all a long-winded way of saying that's my fond memory, not this story or this match. Because being around at Barry's and watching this, it was just he was catching me up, and I must have seen what comes before the match at SummerSlam, where they do actually show a bit of video recap amongst the Leslie Nielsen nonsense and all of that, and fill it in the gaps on hang on. Why is the two Undertakers? Hang on. Which one's the real one? Oh, hang on. Very clearly it's the tall one and not the one who's 2 foot shorter and has a completely different face. Probably not him. Yeah. Even as a kid, it was well, that's clearly not the Undertaker. Clearly he's on the take from $1 Million Man. But at the same time, not really buying into it, not really being into it, just seeing it as this just weird curiosity that it really was, and maybe not realizing at the time, but kind of maybe subconsciously realizing, wow, this company's desperate right now, and it probably makes sense that Barry's the only person who still watches these pay-per-views, and none of the other mates from school invite me around to watch the WWF anymore, because this is what they're serving up.
This is what they're giving us. Yeah. To not be a complete cynic about all of this, because I certainly am when we get to the actual match. My sort of favorite treasured memory of the premise, I wish it was sausage rolls, quite honestly, but it's the, do you remember the magazine advert that was on the back of the magazines at the time? And it was Undertaker looking into like a broken mirror. And that was how they illustrated the two Undertakers. And it said like, so hot, it's scary. And I used to love that. I just thought that was a really impressive image of like, I know what, fair enough. Like two Undertakers, this is pretty interesting. But the older I've gotten, the whole thing is sponsored by Domino's Pizza. And it says Domino's delivers SummerSlam 1994. And I'm genuinely wondering if it was supposed to be the illustration of somebody answering the door to a takeaway delivery guy. And it was all just like the Undertaker's looking out and like it's another Undertaker handing him a pizza. If they could have got away with it, they would have put a pizza in the Undertaker's hand and he would have just, rather than the glove being out all ceremonial, it would have been like, here's your pepperoni, mate, or something like that.
Like the Nick Gage pizza cutter, but in 1994 money. Maybe that's where the purple came from. Maybe that's literally it's like Duke the Dumpster Drosy changing his gear, and the next thing your house we're looking at, maybe it was of the time. That could have fit. It's funny. I shouldn't poo-poo it totally, because there was like elements of it. Like I do, obviously the whole Marty Jannetty and all of that stuff with it, with Undertaker being rose up. Like I do remember distinctly seeing that around the time at some point and thinking at the time it was cool. Definitely not as cool watching it back now, like you said, with the fake lightning bolts and electricity sounds, and Undertaker cutting a promo from inside the casket where it's like, he's very protective of the business, isn't he, Undertaker? But like, I mean, how was that camera there? Like even as a kid, it was kind of like, hang on, how are they filming that? That doesn't really make any sense, does it? That doesn't really hold any water. But there was something to be said for the smoke and mirrors, and it was to be honest, I think that maybe the saving grace of it is it's a storyline that a kid would book, isn't it? It's a storyline that you'd happen to maybe like one Christmas, your mum bought your Undertaker figure, and then not knowing your nan bought you one as well, and you'd make them fight each other, and you'd come up with a story that there was two Undertakers and they had to fight over who was the real one. It's the type of thing kids would come up with, down to like playing Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, and when you get two of the same character and they slightly change the color of the gear, they literally do that here as well. It's the type of stuff you'd play around with as a kid. The difference here, they were putting it on a pay-per-view when they were expected to be able to buy it.
I'm glad you mentioned that specific Street Fighter thing, because as a wrestling gear fan, that was always something I got a massive kick out of, was on those games, seeing what the fighter's away kit was, even if it was just like a slightly different color or something like that. I was always just glad to see it. And that's ultimately what... like Undertaker doesn't get a away kit. He gets a brand new home kit, and he relegates the grey one to being his away kit, because he does indeed debut the purple here. All of this is, it's very literally smoke and mirrors ultimately, because they do use smoke and storms, and the urn that Paul Bearer has is now massive and alight for some reason, and it's all just to sort of dress up the return of the Undertaker to prove that DiBiase is fake. Undertaker's now in purple. He does get a massive pop as he returns, and as you say, the fans immediately, not that any of them doubted it, but at least get to know the one they're supposed to cheer. And DiBiase's kind of realizing that the jig is up and it's a matter of time. They do quite, and again, this is maybe Dr. Fed speaking, I don't know, but I genuinely like the bit where Paul Bearer and Ted DiBiase disrobe their Undertakers at the same time, and then the Undertakers remove their hat at the same time. It's totally the best possible way to do a bad thing, bit of it at very least. But as soon as the bell rings, the bad thing reveals itself, and there's no way out, and we're all stuck. Undertaker, as you say, like loads taller than Brian Lee, just get some bigger lifts. What were they thinking? They were stood next to each other all day. Get some bigger lifts in those boots. But Undertaker wins a chop battle over the fake Undertaker to prove that he's stronger. And just for the commentators to let any last viewers that haven't gotten over the line yet aware that that's the Undertaker. The fake, I'll call him Faker because it's just easier. Underfaker from this point is already kind of distracted by realizing that he's getting his arse handed to him by the real Undertaker. Undertaker drags him back into the ring when he tries to powder. He chokes him away. Undertaker ends up back on the floor and is able to briefly take advantage by snapping Undertaker's neck over the top rope. But that doesn't last. He goes for what we now know as the old school, the rope walk, and Undertaker counters Undertaker with ease and then does his own version. Again, it's this idea that every time the fake one tries something, the real one does it better. Are you stupid? Are you picking it up yet? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? They must, when Cena used to say he would call spots so that Rosette could hear. Is this the work rate equivalent of that, where the wrestlers are working to let the last person in the corner of the United Center aware that the purple one's the real one, lads, if in any doubt?
It's exactly what they're going for. Like down to like we joke about like the different colored outfits, because they're probably thinking, well, even though one's like 10 foot tall and the other one has a different face, he is in fact, if they're both in grey, they might get confused and not know who it is. So you need to make clear that there's an evil one and a good one. But the concept falls apart, doesn't it? Because like at the point that you realize there's two Undertakers, you realize that $1 Million Man's one's not the Undertaker. So like he doesn't come with any of the power that the actual Undertaker comes with. So it just looks, I think part of the reason this crowd is dead, it's not just that the match is bad, because it is. It's part of the layout of this, because they have to give the Undertaker offense, and the Undertaker, despite all the bells and whistles, and it is the best part of the match, is it's the entrances. That's kind of the truth of the Undertaker in the 90s, just because the crowd are up for that. The crowd, oh my God, the Undertaker's back, and they're into all that. But this point in the match, when it's actually time for the bell to ring, and it has to be a match where he has to sell, no one wants to see that, and no one really believes this Undertaker either. They're all just kind of sitting there on the hands, aren't they? Just not invested in it, really, waiting for the inevitable proper Undertaker come back to happen, or just confused by the entire thing, really. It's just absolutely bizarre.
No, you're right. And I don't know if we're giving ourselves an impossible job here of trying to rebook the Undertaker versus the Undertaker to make it make sense. But
you tried it on the British Indies, mate. Did you ever, as a kid, see the UK Undertaker, or Undertaker 2? He was on the posters near me. Nice way to get around that copyright. He's not the original. He's number 2. He's the sequel. It'd be all over the place.
Was he taking on UK by any chance?
If that wasn't what he was called, it's exactly what he should have been called. Somebody needs to go back and do that. Do another tribute show.
And his friend, what was he called? Six Pack, the 1, 2, 3 boy, or whatever it was. Like
Frankie Sloan, that was, yeah.
But no,
I think he was called
say,
DX, which was a nice way around that one too.
It was to your point that I think if they'd have thought this through and realised, as you say, what we're going to do when the match actually starts, because that's when people realise, they would have probably come up with something wiser, like the Underfaker leads like a beatdown on a popular babyface, and then it's like lights off, lights on, and the real one's in the ring, and he just like Tombstone saves a babyface, Tombstone's in there, and it's not so much a match as it is like a segment before the main event or something. I really think they could have pulled something like that off, but they got obsessed with this. They're going to wrestle each other. There was a story that the fake one was going to stick around as a character afterwards.
Read that in the torch,
And I genuinely think what's one of the things that's gone on here is that obviously when this storyline started back in January to give the Undertaker time off, Vince McMahon did not know if he was going to be a prisoner or a free man by July. And then obviously by the time he gets off from the federal trial, he's got control again, and it doesn't have to be Jerry Jarrett or Pat Patterson or whatever. And he probably just wants to wrap it up. And he just says, right, it's going to end here. We will do a match because I want it done. And that's pretty much like, once the Undertaker takes advantage here, this is pretty much it. Undertaker gets one last counter and he botches it. He goes for like a stun gun on the top rope, and the two of them just fall pathetically towards the ropes. The fans aren't even booing because they're too bored to care. That's the reality of this. Vince McMahon, I reckon, you talk about your memory of eating dinner. I have a memory that Vince McMahon being forced to commentate that the crowd are like in stunned awe and silence might be, as a 9-year-old, the first time I remember realized that I was being lied to about a quiet crowd, and remember thinking, now these are just quiet. They're just quiet. They're just, because I was sitting there thinking, what's this? Never an Undertaker kid. He hits a choke slam, does the fake Undertaker, but the Undertaker sits up. Undertaker walks basically headfirst into a tombstone, which the Undertaker hits, but the Undertaker sits up from the tombstone, counters out of the second one, which was pretty cool, actually. The over-the-top counter that we'd never seen before, drills him with like a super tombstone, and the fake Undertaker is dead, but the Undertaker picks him up for 2 more to like absolutely seal his fate. 3 tombstones later, the Undertaker is well and truly finished, and you barely even make out his demise because the lights have gone off for the thunder and lightning effects as the Undertaker rolls him into the casket, and Vince kind of has to hurriedly join the dots, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure he's rolling him into the casket there. The Druids are out, and they're just it's gone. It's gone forever. Forget about the Undertaker. And the real pathos for me, Benno, is not in the 8 minutes 57 and it felt like longer, of bidding farewell to the fake Undertaker here, but it's through to Randy Savage, who was given the opportunity to close out SummerSlam, only for there to be a bit of a bit, like a Naked Gun bit, where Vince's man says, "Oh, we're going to have to go to Randy Savage." And then Randy Savage has tried to end the show, and he's like, "Oh, no, we're going to have to go to Leslie Nielsen so that they can do the case is closed." It's all a Naked Gun runner. But Benno, those words from Randy Savage are the last ones he ever utters on a WWF pay-per-view ever.
Oh, wow. That's it? That's the end?
That's the end of Randy Savage in the World Wrestling Federation forever.
How we were, until he did like the stuff with the game years later, wasn't it? Never quite a proper one though. It was a 2K deal rather than
never made his real return.
That's
it's
crazy.
The man deserved better than this.
Oh, absolutely. And we all deserve better than it. Like I say, it's one of those, the finish to it is pure Poochie went back to his home planet stuff. Because like you said, I was reading the newsletters around the time, and yeah, pretty much the plan was to do house shows. And I reckon, like you say, kids like us were watching it going, what the fuck was this? Fans in the audience were going, what the fuck was this? I think that went from, we could put it on, imagine it on the billboard, Undertaker versus Undertaker. That's going to sell some tickets to, do people really want to see this tour and act live? I don't think they do. Let's just put it to death, literally, and let Brian go off and, you know, we can be chains or, you know, whatever he eventually ends up being. Like, it was just because apparently even he was happy at the time. I was like, yeah, I'd rather do my own thing, to be honest. I'd rather go to ECW and choke slam Tommy Dreamer through some tables. Let's just do that instead. It's probably just cut your losses and walk away from it, because yeah, the idea, there was something there. And, you know, speaking of pay-per-view buy rates, it didn't do too badly as a pay-per-view buy rate. Maybe there was something to that, but the reality of it just made everybody run a mile, and it's an awful match, innit? But I think that was the point of the 5-star match review. It was to get you to bury some dead man. So I think we've achieved that here.
Oh, we welcome that at the very least. And look, Benno, let's be fair about this. At least this was just one match. At least this didn't lead to The Undertaker wrestling Ted DiBiase rivals for a full year and a half over a stolen earth. Yeah. Because who would be stupid enough to review that period of time? You know what I mean?
There is that. But, at least we're not doing the Naked Gun films, mate. It could be worse.
That's true. That is true. But no, thank you very much, DS_R1, for that 5-star review. We do welcome any dead man, as long as you don't mind us shitting on it. And indeed, anything from the new generation that might not be covered in the In Your House catalogue. It could be anything from television. We've got some absolute doozies on the horizon that I cannot wait to get to. But keep those reviews coming in. It does help us game the algorithm. And if you want myself and Benno to talk about things that, you know, through our GRAPPL and WhatCulture coverage, we might not be able to get to together, this is an opportunity to do that. And we do enjoy that as well. So yeah, leave us those 5-star reviews and tune in to hear your name read out and possibly your 5-star review on the next edition of Housekeeping. And speaking of this Housekeeping, Benno, before we wrap up, we should probably talk about what we've got in store coming on the next In Your House. It's going to be Rage in the Cage.
What a generic
name. About
let's double check that one. That's not one that sticks in the. It's not exactly good friends, better enemies, is it? Rage in the Cage.
Not really. We talked about obviously 1996 getting off to this hot start, and as part of that, we're going to go into, for the very first time, when we start our next review, our first ever free-for-all that we're reviewing together. The pre-shows and the Sunday night slams are gone. We are now being given access to bonus free matches. Like, how lucky did you feel at the time to even hear about these things or see highlights? Because Sky didn't have these, did they? So it was like In Your House itself, free-for-all stuff was just like gold dust to UK viewers.
It'd just be the pictures you'd see in Death magazine, wouldn't it? Like, remember the Austin moving out the way of Yokozuna and the bonsai drop, and they had like that freeze framed in Death mag. That's the one that sticks out to me. And I was like, oh, I want that. It's bonus wrestling. It's more wrestling. I want it. I want to be excited about Jake the Snake Rockets singles matches in 1996. That's what I want. I want some Tatanka in my life. It didn't matter what it was, more hidden wrestling that you couldn't get. I'd be dead frustrated reading the magazines.
No, it's so we've got our first one that we'll be recapping on that, as well as the grand payoff to one of the stories we've tracked throughout this entire podcast so far. Razor Ramon taking on the 1-2-3 Kid. The kind of out of nowhere story as Triple H moves from pig farmers to bin men with Duke the Dumpster Drosy. Camp Corner explodes as we get to talk about the surprising babyface turn of Yokozuna. Looking forward to that one. We've got both Hart brothers actually making the show this time, as opposed to half of the events in 1995, as Owen Hart takes on Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart takes on Diesel in the aforementioned cage match. I cannot wait, mate. We're on the road to WrestleMania all over again.
Shawn and Brett on the same In Your House, and I was about to say no sight of the Undertaker. They've left him for the dark matches, but unfortunately, yeah, he does poke his head out of a certain hole as well. But it's all great stuff. Undercard wrestlers that we like, Shawn and Brett on the same show, Owen Hart in Pride of Place, Razor and Kid, and no Dean Douglas, sadly, no Ahmed Johnson, but outside of that, I think it's a lot of things that'll be on both of our wish lists. This one.
Yeah, the big stars are starting to circle for their key spots at the right time of year, aren't they? And I guess until then, all I can say is to if you want to kind of catch up with our stuff in the meantime, you can follow myself along on X at Michael Hamflett. I will throw in a quick plug here for our biggest and daftest and most ambitious live show ever. It's our own Road to WrestleMania, and it's going to be at the HyperX Arena in Las Vegas. If those SmackDown tickets are too expensive for you, and believe me, they're too expensive for us, that's why we're doing a watch along on the biggest and best screen in all of Las Vegas. We're going to be doing our usual live stage show nonsense, but then we're going to be doing a full SmackDown watch along, and then all our YouTube and podcast coverage afterwards. You are invited to the whole thing or any of it with your ticket. All tickets are available at whatculture.com/tickets. It's extremely scary. If you're going to Las Vegas, if you're going to WrestleMania, we'd absolutely love to have you along for that.
Mate, in 1995 and 1996, the WWF will run smaller places than the HyperX Arena. It's incredible. Wish I could be there. Sounds absolutely amazing. And yeah, obviously, if anybody's in town, definitely head over there. I can't imagine there'll be a better place to be that night, other than in the arena itself. But even then, you can get cheaper drinks there. You can have yourself a good night. It's a cheaper night in general. I think you'll have a better time.
Our commentary on SmackDown is going to be better than if they give it to Michael Cole and Corey Graves, So
that's guaranteed, 100%. Oh,
and where can people find you, Benno?
Definitely, yeah. Find me on Twitter at Benson Richard D, and yeah, find all our GRAPPL stuff everywhere podcasts are sold just by searching the word GRAPPL. No way.
And until next time, and in your house 6, thank you for the house.
Oh, decent, cool Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, heartbreaker, red hot, show 'em how. Uh-oh, here comes Vader now. Ahmed Johnson's muscles huge, Hunter Helmsley's blood is blue. Yokozuna from Japan, Bulldog Englishman, Warriors back and taking names. Goldust is mad and strange. Godwin's like you can't forget.